In the dimly lit halls of the Louvre, where King Charles V of France reigned, a profound silence hung heavy in the air. The library, a vast repository of knowledge, was the heart of the king's court, a place where the past and the present converged in a tapestry of wisdom. Here, in this hallowed space, the stories of great men and their fortitude were not just recorded but lived. One day, as the king's librarian, Gilles Mallet, meticulously catalogued the royal collection, a peculiar tale caught his attention. It was the story of Democritus, an ancient Greek philosopher who, in his relentless pursuit of knowledge, gouged out his own eyes to sharpen his mind. The act, though brutal, was a testament to the lengths to which some would go to achieve deeper understanding. This anecdote, whispered through the corridors of the Louvre, became a symbol of the unwavering dedication to wisdom that Charles V himself emulated. But the library held more than just stories of ancient sages. It was a living, breathing entity that connected the past to the present. The king, a patron of learning, saw the library as a bridge between the wisdom of the ancients and the needs of his time. Among the texts that filled its shelves was a translation of Valerius Maximus's Memorable Deeds and Sayings, a book that chronicles the virtues of great men. In it, the story of Anaxagoras, a philosopher who, upon learning of his son's deaths, remained unperturbed, continued his philosophical debate, and calmly stated, "You bring me no news, for I knew they were mortal," stood out. This anecdote, like a mirror, reflected the stoic resolve that Charles V sought to instill in his court. The third story, drawn from Saint Augustine's City of God, added a spiritual dimension to the library's legacy. Augustine, in his monumental work, discussed the trials of Anaxagoras, highlighting his intellectual independence and moral fortitude. Augustine's account, which questioned the value of human reasoning without divine guidance, resonated deeply with the Christian ethos of the king's court. It was a reminder that true wisdom, while rooted in human inquiry, must be guided by a higher purpose. These three stories, each from a different era and each with its own unique message, were not just isolated anecdotes. They were threads in a larger tapestry that Christine de Pizan, a renowned scholar and writer, wove into her book, The Book of the Deeds and Good Mores of the Wise King Charles V. Christine, who had access to the king's vast library, saw in these stories a reflection of Charles V's own character. The king, like the philosophers of old, embodied a steadfast commitment to virtue and knowledge. In her book, Christine connected these stories to the very fabric of the royal library. The library, she argued, was not just a collection of books but a living testament to the king's vision. Gilles Mallet, the librarian, was the custodian of this vision, ensuring that the wisdom of the ancients was not lost but translated and adapted for a new audience. Valerius Maximus and Saint Augustine, through their works, became part of a new narrative, one that celebrated the continuity of knowledge and the pursuit of virtue. The frontispiece of the Memorable Deeds and Sayings by Valerius Maximus, illustrated by the artist's brush, captured this continuity. It showed Valerius writing his Latin work, Simon de Hesdin translating it into French, and the translator presenting the book to King Charles V. The image, a visual representation of the text network, linked the ancient world to the court of Charles V, binding them together in a shared pursuit of wisdom. Similarly, the frontispiece of Raoul de Prisles's translation of The City of God depicted the heavenly and earthly cities, with the king at the center, receiving the translated work from Raoul, who was inspired by Saint Augustine. The image was a powerful symbol of the king's role in bridging the past and the present, and in guiding his court towards a higher moral purpose. Christine's book, through its careful selection and arrangement of these stories, demonstrated how the library of Charles V was not just a repository of knowledge, but a dynamic force that shaped the culture and values of the court. The stories of Democritus, Anaxagoras, and the spiritual insights of Augustine were not just historical accounts but living lessons, guiding the king and his courtiers in their pursuit of wisdom and virtue. In the Louvre, the past came alive, and the present was shaped by the wisdom of the ages. King Charles V, through his library, ensured that the legacy of the ancients would continue to illuminate the path of knowledge and virtue for generations to come. In 1372, Charles V of France commissioned a translation of John of Salisbury's Polycraticus from Latin to French. John of Salisbury, a prominent figure in the 12th century, wrote extensively on ethics and government, drawing from his experiences as a diplomat and advisor to Pope Hadrian IV and the archbishops of Canterbury. His work, Polycraticus, was a significant text that bridged theoretical and practical aspects of political life, making it a valuable resource for Charles V, who sought to instill these principles in his courtiers. The king's own copy of the translated Polycraticus begins with a striking miniature painting. In this painting, Charles V is depicted seated on a throne, wearing a blue robe adorned with gold fleur-de-lis. Beside him stands a book wheel, a device used to hold multiple books, symbolizing the king's extensive library. On the lectern atop the book wheel lies an open Bible, with a passage from Ecclesiasticus 14:22 visible. Blessed is the man who shall continue in wisdom, and who shall meditate in his justice, and in his mind shall think of the all-seeing eye of God. Charles's gaze and pointing finger draw attention to this verse, emphasizing his commitment to wisdom and justice. The incipit page, or the first page of the manuscript, is a carefully crafted visual and textual ensemble. The page is divided into two main sections, the upper half with the miniature, and the lower half with the text. The large decorated initials, C and B, form a visual link between the painting and the text. The C introduces the rubric, which begins with "Sci Commence," and the B introduces the prologue with "Beatus Homo." These initials, decorated in lapis lazuli and gold, echo the colors of Charles's robe and the background of the painting, reinforcing the connection between the king and the text. The visual and textual elements on the page work together to convey a deeper message. The verse from Ecclesiasticus, which Charles points to, introduces the theme of wisdom and justice. This theme is then echoed in the text below, where the prologue begins with a quotation from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13. Blessed is the man who finds wisdom and who makes prudence his own. The subtle difference in the verbs used, morator, he shall continue, and meditabator, he shall meditate in Ecclesiasticus, compared to invenit, he finds, and affluit, he makes prudence his own in Proverbs, highlights the king's active role in seeking and embodying wisdom. Denis Fallachet, the translator, carefully crafted the prologue to reinforce the king's image as a wise and just ruler. He introduces another source of the blessed theme, this time from a treatise by Saint Ambrose. By weaving together these biblical and classical references, Fallachet creates a polyphonic or symphonic citation, a method that underscores the king's authority and the interconnectedness of wisdom and governance. The translation of Polycraticus into French was not just a linguistic exercise, but a strategic move to elevate the status of the French language. Charles V's library, with its translations of classical and medieval texts, challenged the dominance of learned languages like Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. By making these texts accessible in French, Charles aimed to establish French as a language of wisdom and philosophy. The illuminated manuscripts, with their rich visual and textual elements, served as powerful tools to convey this message. The incipit page of the Polycraticus is a prime example of this multifaceted approach. The visual and textual elements work in harmony to present Charles V as an enlightened ruler, dedicated to the principles of wisdom and justice. The manuscript, with its carefully curated content, not only translates the text, but also transforms it into a living, dynamic medium that engages the reader in a deeper understanding of the king's vision for his court and his realm. In recent years, the world of literary studies and critical theory has faced increasing challenges. Scholars and educators in these fields often feel under attack, both from within and outside academia. This sense of siege is reflected in the titles of conferences and the discussions they inspire. For instance, a 2014 conference in Paris asked, "Why read the Roman de la Rose today?" Similarly, a Stanford University conference that same year posed the question, "Criticism Theory Today." The use of the word "today" and the question mark suggest a deep unease about the relevance and future of these disciplines. One factor contributing to this anxiety is the naturalistic turn in contemporary theory. This trend involves a growing interest in scientific explanations for human behavior and cultural phenomena. Scholars who embrace this approach believe that only a scientific investigation can truly capture the underlying causes of literary content and form. They argue that traditional critical methods, which focus on human intentions and beliefs, are outdated and insufficient. For example, Some literary theorists and cultural critics argue that political attitudes and decisions are influenced by automatic bodily reactions and pre-subjective forces. They suggest that these biological and neurological factors are more important than the conscious reasons people give for their beliefs and actions. This view challenges the traditional role of literary criticism, which has long focused on the meanings and interpretations that humans attribute to texts and art. The shift towards a naturalistic approach is not just about adding new perspectives to literary studies. It seeks to replace existing critical methods with scientific models. This transformation is driven by the belief that scientific methods are more rigorous and modern. As a result, scholars who do not adopt these new methods are often seen as outdated and at risk of becoming obsolete. However, this shift raises significant questions about the nature of literary and artistic objects. Scientific methods are designed to study natural phenomena, not artificial constructions like literature and art. When scientific language is used to analyze these works, it can change the way we understand and interpret them. This transformation can be seen in the way John Dewey, a philosopher, described the process of inquiry. For Dewey, inquiry was about transforming an indeterminate situation into a unified whole through controlled and intelligent mediation. This approach emphasizes the importance of method and control, which are central to scientific inquiry. Richard Rorty, a prominent philosopher, criticized the idea of applying naturalistic methods to literary criticism. He argued that science and philosophy have different goals and methods. Science is about controlling and predicting phenomena, while philosophy is about understanding the social justification of beliefs. Rorty believed that we do not need to view knowledge as an accurate representation of reality. Instead, we should focus on how beliefs are justified within a community. The tension between scientific and humanistic approaches reflects a broader debate about the value and purpose of the humanities. While the naturalistic turn offers new insights, it also risks reducing the complexity and richness of literary and artistic works. The challenge for scholars is to find a balance that respects the unique nature of humanistic inquiry while remaining open to new ideas and methods. Rorty sees philosophical inquiry as a kind of conversation between the person asking questions and the thing being studied. This conversation helps us understand what is real about the thing and what we add to our understanding through our own thoughts. For example, we might figure out what is necessary and certain about the thing, and what is just our own interpretation or imagination. Rorty calls this process critical intelligence instead of a method. He thinks this approach should be experimental, open-minded, and creative, without trying to find absolute certainty. Critical intelligence treats the thing being studied with respect, not trying to control or change it, but rather engaging in a rational discussion that maintains a sense of irony and distance. This means recognizing that our understanding is always limited by our own narrative and the norms we use to interpret the world. Rorty's approach is a good way to combine critical thinking with respect for the object being studied. It doesn't ignore the changes happening in the world, but it also doesn't try to force a one-size-fits-all method on the humanities. When we think about digital humanities, we see a strong push toward using quantitative methods, which are more like the methods used in the natural sciences. Some people argue that these methods are needed to save the humanities from being overshadowed by commercial interests and the fast pace of modern life. One of the most influential books on this topic, published in 2012 and titled Digital Humanities, describes a new way of thinking about the relationship between digital tools and humanistic inquiry. The authors of this book see the future of the humanities as a partnership between humans and data machines, where the way we value and study human experience will change. They contrast this with the traditional model of the humanities, which relies on printed books and articles written by individual authors. The tension between these two models is evident, with one side embracing quantitative methods and the other holding on to qualitative analysis. The digital side is more likely to integrate with the social sciences, while the other side fights to maintain its autonomy and critical stance. The tools of the digital side, such as design and data visualization, are seen as the new way to shape knowledge and arguments. However, this focus on design and computational methods can sometimes overshadow the traditional critical and theoretical questions that are central to the humanities. These questions often ask why, rather than how, and they are concerned with the norms and standards that govern actions in a specific historical context. For example, great literature, philosophy, and history often ask why things are the way they are, rather than how they can be made to work. The authors of Digital Humanities recognize this tension, but seem more focused on the transformative impact of technology on scholarship. They acknowledge that humanistic thinking has much to offer to computational methods, but their discussion often returns to the tools and terms of digital technology. They use words like design, encode, interface, and modeling to describe the new ways of thinking about humanistic inquiry. The title Digital Humanities, with the underscore between the words, is meant to show the connection and tension between the digital and the humanistic. It suggests a world where the humanities are fundamentally changed by digital technology. However, this vision of a completely transformed world may not reflect the reality of how humanities research is actually done. Computational thinking, as defined by computer scientists, involves breaking down complex problems into smaller, more manageable parts and abstracting away details that are not essential. This approach is very different from the way humanists think, which often involves adding more context and connections to a text or idea. Humanistic research builds on a broad base of knowledge and illusions, creating a rich and detailed understanding of a work. Despite these differences, digital humanities have become a significant part of university research. This may be because there is a fear that traditional methods of the humanities are outdated, and that the humanities need to adopt scientific methods to remain relevant. However, if the epistemologies of the sciences and humanities were truly compatible, scientists should be able to achieve the same results as humanists by using their own methods. This is something that is not often discussed in the literature on digital humanities. One positive aspect of digital humanities is the creation of vast digital libraries, like the Digital Library of Medieval Manuscripts at Johns Hopkins University. These resources have transformed the way scholars study medieval manuscripts by making thousands of images accessible online. This has not only changed the way we look at the date, but also how we think about it. The availability of these resources has created a new perspective for researchers, allowing them to see connections and patterns that were previously hidden. In the end, the challenge for digital humanities is to find a balance between the transformative power of digital tools and the deep, contextual understanding that is the hallmark of humanistic inquiry. The advent of digitized resources has fundamentally transformed our understanding of medieval literary works. These technological advancements have provided scholars and enthusiasts with unprecedented access to a vast array of codices, allowing for a more nuanced and comprehensive exploration of the intricate relationships between authors, texts, scribes, illuminators, and the public in the Middle Ages. In the past, the study of medieval literature was often limited to the critical editions produced by modern text editors. These editions aim to present an ideal version of a work, stripping away the rich, multilayered nature of the original manuscripts. However, the availability of digital copies has revealed that medieval texts were far from static and autonomous. Instead, they were dynamic and collaborative creations, shaped by the hands of scribes, artists, and commentators. For instance, the Roman de la Rose, a masterpiece of medieval literature, exists in over 250 manuscripts, each of which offers a unique representation of the work. These manuscripts are not mere copies of an original text. They are living documents that evolved through the contributions of various individuals. Scribes, who were not merely copyists but active participants in the creative process, often adapted and embellished the text. Illuminators and rubricators added visual elements, while commentators provided their own interpretations and insights. This collaborative environment transformed the manuscript into a vibrant space for artistic and intellectual exchange. The dynamic nature of medieval manuscripts also reflects a different understanding of authorship and textual integrity. Unlike modern works, which are often seen as fixed and unchangeable, medieval texts were fluid and open to interpretation. Each manuscript version of a work, such as the Roman de la Rose, is a testament to the perceptual experiences of the scribes, illuminators, and readers who engaged with it. This means that the meaning of a medieval text is not solely determined by its author, but is also influenced by the various actors who contributed to its transmission. Moreover, the codex itself became a platform for literary contestation. Scribes sometimes combined works that were wildly heterogeneous or even philosophically opposed, creating a space for intellectual debate and dialogue. For example, a manuscript might include a text followed by a series of responses or refutations, effectively turning the codex into a form of scholastic disputatio. This practice underscores the interactive and performative nature of medieval literature, where the text was not a final product but a starting point for further engagement. The digitization of medieval codices has also highlighted the importance of the physical layout of the manuscript. The arrangement of text, images, and marginalia was not random, but carefully planned to enhance the reading experience. This layout often reflected the intentions of the master scribe, who oversaw the production of the manuscript. For instance, the Morgan Library's Chansonnier N. Morgan 819 is a prime example of a manuscript where the interaction between text and marginal sketches creates a rich, multilayered reading experience. In conclusion, the digitization of medieval manuscripts has revolutionized our understanding of medieval literature. It has revealed the collaborative and dynamic nature of these texts, challenging the notion of a fixed, autonomous work. Instead, medieval texts are seen as living documents, shaped by the creative contributions of scribes, artists, and readers. This new perspective not only enriches our appreciation of medieval literature, but also invites us to rethink the role of the modern critical edition. As we continue to explore the wealth of digitized resources, we gain a deeper understanding of the complex and multifaceted nature of medieval literary works.